Hi, I'm Dr. Bacuzzi. This is Music 102, Elements of Basic Music Theory. And in this class, we're going to talk about what makes up music. And we're going to learn vocabulary and symbols that actually represent music. We're going to be talking about the 5 elements that make up music. First, starting with rhythm, then melody, harmony, form, and timbre. Rhythm, basically, we're going to be working with steady beat, meter, tempo, note, and rest values. In melody, we're going to be working with pitch, high and low, and intervals, the space between notes. Harmony, the tonality, major to minor, chords, and it accompanies melody. Fourth, form. This is the way music is organized. It has an order, has repetitions, has variations to it. And then last, timbre. This was what makes it musical. Tone color, what instrumentation is being used. The texture, whether it's monophonic, homophonic, or polyphonic. Dynamics, degrees of loud and soft. And articulation, whether it's short and detached or long and smooth and connected. Music is like a language. It parallels our spoken language. We have letters that represent sounds. The letter B represents B. When we learn to read in a language, we learn that those letters have sounds, and we put those letters together and they create words, phrases, and sentences. We have symbols in music with notes and rhythms that create melodies or songs. When we write a language, we have an alphabet. In music, we have notes and rests that represent the story. The first element we're going to explore is rhythm. Rhythm is basically physical. We bop to it, we move, it has energy to it. It's also math, because we group those accents and unaccented parts of that energy together, and we create meter. We have the written notation, which represents sound and silence. I'm going to show you some options for a metronome. First, we have one accessible to us just by looking at a clock. On the second hand, that's a beat per second. So we call that metronome speed 60. Now, the steady beat is one of the easiest concepts, right? Heartbeat, looking at the clock. It's the easy concept to understand, but it's really a difficult concept to implement. We tend to get faster or slower if we don't have that trained understanding of that equal space between each pulse. So, in the 1800s, this was invented. It's a metronome, and it has a weight on the arm here, and depending upon where you put the weight, if it's higher, it's slower. If it's lower, it's faster. Later on, it was invented an electronic. This is a plug-in metronome. They don't make these anymore. And you could regulate the speed by turning the dial. Faster and then slower. This one is on 80 right there. This is also electronic. It's battery operated. It has both light and sound. Oftentimes this is used by a conductor if they want to get a sense of how fast or slow it is. They can look at the red light flashing at the speed of that and determine how fast or slow to take a piece. And everyone, if you have a cell phone, access to the internet, free metronome online, has a blue field to it. In the middle of the circle here is the metronome number, which is how many ticks per minute. And this is at 126. And you just get your finger and you can adjust it, and that's where we'll stop. Okay? Meter is defined as a regular, recurring pattern of strong and weak beats. In music, we represent strong and weak, accented and unaccented in this way. Accent, unaccented. In poetry, we also do this as well. The word meter, the accent falls on the first syllable. Meter. Steady. Symbol, accents on the first syllable, and then the unaccented is on the second syllable. Over here we have words that are unaccented in the first syllable and accented in the second syllable, like define, repeat, rehearse. So the first meter we're going to talk about is duple meter. Meter in two. Duple has the prefix or the root of the word double, duple, duo, meaning two. So duple is meter in two, where it has an accented and an unaccented beat. We conduct it with heavy being the downward motion, and then the upward motion being the up or the second half of the beat, which is what we were talking about before with accented, unaccented. So if we were, this is 1 and this is 2, here's 1 and 2, there's our duple meter. If we go down and up, 1, 2, 1, 2. I'm going to play an example of that on the piano. 1, 2. 1, 2. Another example of duple meter is a march. We hear bands play them when they're marching in a parade. We hear it, marches played at the 4th of July celebration. And it's basically because we have right, left, right, right, left, right, left. And we feel that heavy, light, heavy, light, heavy, light, 1, 2, 1, 2. So those are strong pieces of music with duple meter. The next meter we're going to talk about is triple meter. Triple meter, as you can tell, is meter in 3. And we see the conducting pattern as accent 1 down to the right and then up. So this is 1, 2, 3. And it looks like this. Accent, unaccent, unaccent. Down, up, up, down, up, down, up, up. Waltz is a very popular form of music in triple meter. I'm going to be playing a waltz by Strauss. He was called the Waltz King because he wrote so many waltzes in the late 1800s in Vienna. He was known for the Viennese waltz. And it's in triple meter. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And so on. The next meter we're going to concentrate on is quadruple meter. Quad, the root of the word, means 4. It has Latin root. We know this from different languages. Uno, due, tre, quattro. We have quarter, a fourth of a dollar. We have quartet, 4 players. Quadraphonic sound, 4 speakers. Okay? So we have quadruple, meaning 4. 4 pulses grouped together. And basically, quadruple is 2 duples. So we have accented, unaccented, accented, unaccented. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. In this one, the 1 is clearly more accented than the 3, but 3 is also. And in the conducting pattern, you'll see it's down, to the left, right, and up. So you have a downward motion here. 2 is the rebound of 1. Coming down is 3, and then going up is 4. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. Accent, unaccent, accent, unaccented. The piece I'm going to play for you in quadruple meter is a Chopin prelude. Tempo is the rate of speed, simply that, how fast or slow you're going to perform a piece. We have the metronome markings. MM stands for Meisel's metronome. Meisel is the German dude who invented it. MM means Meisel's metronome. So if you see an MM, it means that you're going to place a number on the tempo. Now 60 was what we said was a beat per second. It can go up to 120, 204, whatever tempo, whatever speed that you desire for your song. There are also Italian words that represent speed. Most of the words that we use to define or to give direction in music are in Italian. A lot of music originated, the development of music originated in Italy. So we have allegro, which means happily, lively. Presto, which means very fast. This is actually as fast a speed as you can possibly play. Vivace, vivacious, lively, with a lot of life. So allegro is like more happy, lively. Vivace is lilting and very fast, and then presto is the fastest. These are medium speeds. Moderato, the word moderate, medium, medium speed. This would be the pulse for a medium speed. Andante, the word comes from andare, which means to go, or to walk. So an andante can easily be described by just stepping. Walk, 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 walk. And there's an andante speed. The slow speeds, largo, which means very slow, grave, which is grave or solemn, or adagio. And adagio is basically between the moderate and the very slow. So there's different degrees of fast and slow, and their tempo. Plural of tempo is tempi. There's an I at the end of it. The next thing we're going to talk about are notes and rests. Notes are the sounds in music, and rests are the silence in music. We talked about parallel of language and letters being representing sounds. Well, we have notes that represent duration or value. So the first note I'm going to teach is the whole note. The whole note is a note head that's open, it's not filled in, and it equals 4 beats or counts. We can use either word, 4 beats or 4 counts. It will be held. 1, 2, 3, 4. I just held la, a note for 4 counts. And I conducted that so that you can see the conducting pattern equaling 4 counts. Now, half of 4, and here's where the math comes in. Half of 4 is 2. So we have a whole note that equals 4. So a half note is now going to equal 2. And half notes are represented with the open note head and a stem. So if a whole note is 4 beats, then half of it is going to be 2. And together they're going to equal 4 beats. Our next note value breakdown, think of fractions, is half of a half is a quarter. And a quarter note is a filled-in note head with a stem. And we have two of those equal to 1/2 note. And altogether, they too will equal 4 beats. I'm writing this out because we oftentimes play in quadruple meter. Remember, music in 4 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? And an eighth note is exactly like the quarter, only we have 2 of them together, and they're represented connected by what we call a beam. This is a beam, B-E-A-M. So we have the note head. This is an open note head. This is a stem. Here's a filled-in note head. We just call it a note head. And for the eighth notes, when we connect the 2 of them, because 2/8 equal a quarter, we use a beam. When we have our 2 eighth notes together. When we don't have eighth notes together, we represent them individually with a flag. So this would be 1, hold 2, hold 3, hold 4. This is 1, hold 2, 1, hold 2. This is 1, 1, 1, 1. And this is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I'm going to give an example of how fractions, math, kind of can help us understand the length of notes. I equate it to a pie. So here's an apple pie. There's the crust. All right, so this whole pie is a whole note. The whole pie equals 4. The whole pie equals 4. Now, for my half note, okay, what's your favorite pie? Coconut cream. All right, here's coconut cream pie. All right, great, great, great. If I cut my pie in half, half of 4 is 2. So each of these are 2. But remember, the whole pie equals 4. Now, my whole pie. Blueberry. I'm going to cut in half. We know that that's 2 and that's 2. So if I cut those in half again, each one of these is going to be a quarter note, a quarter of a pie, a fourth of a pie, a fourth. This is a whole, this is a half. Okay? Now my favorite is what we call pizza pie. I'm from New York and I'm Italian. So we call this a pizza pie. And it's my favorite because a lot of our note values are not just these basic notes that are equal to 4, 2, and 1 beat, but divided up. We have a lot of examples of that we'll be talking about soon, about how these rhythms broken down even more is useful, especially in rap music and vocal music. So here's my pizza pie. I'm going to go ahead and divide it in 4. It still equals 4, but I'm going to cut each one of the quarters in half. Now we have the half note, the eighth note. That is a half a beat, and remember we have it designated by flags. This equals 1, or a quarter note. If we tie them together with a beam, because we have 2 together, that equals one beat, a quarter note. Same thing for here, eighth notes equals one beat. And then our last quarter of our pie, again, are our two eighth notes. Now, we count for the duration. 1, 2, 3, 4. We hold it. La. So that note represents the duration of 4 counts or 4 beats. This note here, the half note, is 2 counts or 2 beats. La, la, held for 2 counts. These individual notes here are a note per beat. La, 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 equaling 4. So when we count eighth notes now, we have to subdivide. This is an important word. We have to divide that one beat in half. So we count those 2. There's a name for those, not just the number 1, 2, 3, 4, but we count them 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And basically it looks like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and if we separated them with the flags, 4 and. Now, this is quadruple meter, oftentimes used in music. The most general, basic, most used meter, quadruple meter. And that's why we have these note values. They simplify how we group these note values in the meter of 4. Let's review these right now. The whole note, held for 4 counts. La. Half notes, 2 counts each. La, la. Quarter note, 1 beat each. La, 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 la. Eighth notes, 2 eighth notes equals 1 beat. So each of these are a half a beat. Don't confuse that though with our half note. This is an eighth note, that's a half of a beat. This is a half note, which is 2 beats. I'm going to explain to you another subdivision based on these 4. Remember our whole pie, the whole note. Then we divided it in half. Now we have 2 on each side, half note, half note. Then we have our pie divided into quarters, and these are quarter notes, 1 each. Then we had our eighth notes. And remember, we divided our quarter into 2 parts. And remember that that still equals 1. Now, we divided these in half, they became eighth notes. If I divide my eighth notes in half, think fractions now, they will be 16th notes. So, I'm going to use my red marker. From the eighth note on, we're going to use flags to identify the difference between these subdivisions. So the next subdivision that we're going to have, I'll simply write out here, and we are going to think of them as 16th notes. Here they are with the flags, 2 flags. The eighth note is the 1 flag, remember. Here's our eighth note right here, and that's this. And so 2/16 equals that eighth note. And if I were to draw it across with beams, connected with the 2 beams, that represents 16th notes. And then when we come back to our counting, I'm going to draw this right under the eighth notes so that we can easily define where those parts of the beat fall. And then here are flags. We count this 1 E and up, 2 E and up, 3 E and up, and then 4 E and up. Notice I made the ands pretty big because that is where these two notes lie, on the and, 1 E, and then the and lines up with the eighth note and then 2 E, and then the and lines up with the third 16th note, 3 E, and the and lines up with the third 16th note, and 4 E, and the and lines up. We can also do this to help us out. We can make this two notes together with the two beams, designating 16th notes. Okay? So this is the 16th note subdivision. And that's the most divided we're going to get. There are, what 16th note divided in half would be a 32nd, then a 64th, and 128th. 128th note is super fast. I'll demonstrate that for you right now. So this is an example of 128th notes. Really fast in succession with each other. Now the next notes are 32nd notes. And that's how fast those subdivisions are, all within 4 beats. To review, a whole note is 4. Half of a whole is 2. A quarter of a whole being 4, is 1. 1, 1, 1, 1. And then an eighth note is half a beat for 1 beat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Dividing that 1 beat into 4 equal parts is a 16th note. And we count it 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. Notice, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, but the ands line up. I drew on here a representation of the next subdivision. Since we had 16ths here, these are 32nd notes. 3 beams, as opposed to the 2 with the 16th note. 3 beams, 3 flags. That was the sound of music. We're going to talk about the silence in music. When we have music, we oftentimes play, but then there are moments where there's no sound, and we call those rests. So we have note values and rest values. The rest values look like this. Here is a whole rest. That whole rest is silence for 4 beats. Here's a half rest. That half rest is silence for 2 beats. This is a quarter rest, a silence for 1 beat. Now, we have our flag starting. This is an 8th rest. If I wanted to group together an 8th note and an 8th rest, I would simply put it over here. And that means you only play that for half a beat and then you rest for half a beat. Same thing goes with the 16th rest. If I were to take this out and put the 16th rest in there, it equals what a 16th note would be. but that is a quarter of a beat. These are half of a beat. These are a quarter of a beat. Not to be confused with, I'll say it again, half note, which is 2 beats, quarter note, which is 1 beat. Eighth notes are a half a beat each because those 2 halves equal 1. 16th notes are a quarter of a beat, and each one of these is equal to a fourth of the quarter note, and all 4 of those equals 1 beat. Whole rest, half rest, quarter rest, eighth rest, 16th rest, 32nd rest. But what about our missing 3 beat note? Well, there's a little formula to it, and it's really easy. If I have a half note, which is equal to 2 beats, I take that note, I divide it in half, so half of 2 is 1, so it's a quarter note, so it's 2 plus 1, right? And that creates what we call a dotted half note. Dotted half note is equal to 3 beats. A dotted half. All right, again, we have our half note here. 2 counts. Half of a half note is 1. So we add them together, 2 plus 1 equals 3. Dotted half note. Now, we are going to talk about how we can do the same thing with the formula to our quarter note. Here's a quarter note, okay, which is a dotted quarter note. Here's our quarter note. We're going to put a dot after it. So we take a quarter note, we divide that in half, and half of 1 is a half. One of our eighth notes, sorry. And there, this is a line that's called a tie, and it adds those 2 values together. So 1 plus a half a beat is 1.5 beats. So this is now called a dotted quarter note. Again, our dotted half note is 3 beats. We take a half note. If we put a dot after it, it means we take half that half note, which is 1. Half of 2 is 1. We add it together with our tie. It's like a plus sign. And then we come up with a dotted half note. We can do the same thing for a dotted quarter note. We take a quarter note, we put a dot after it, and it adds half of the value of that quarter note, which is a half a beat, an eighth note. We tie it together, it's like adding it. 1 plus a half is 1.5. So we have a dotted half note, dotted quarter note. Okay, now we're going to put this all together. So we have to establish a meter. And as I said, our note values are easily in quadruple meter. So meter and 4. I'm going to put 4 beats with a quarter note being 1 beat. So this is beat, 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 beat. And then we have a note that's 3 beats, a note that's 1 beat, and so forth and so on. And they're in groups. Each of these little cardboard placards are in groups of 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, next plus 2, 3, 4, and then a whole note is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and then the rest is a beat. It's a quarter rest. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and then these 2 eighth notes is 1 beat. So those 2 together will be a beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And then a half note, 1, 2, with a half rest, and that's the end. Now, in order for us to understand this, they have to be in groups of sets of 4 beats. So we established our meter by putting 4 over a quarter note, And then between each 4 beat sections, we're going to put a line. And that is called a bar line. In between each of the bar lines, we call these measures. That's called a bar line because it separates. Another name for measure is bar. So I can call this a measure or a bar. I'll refer both to both measure and bar when we're talking about this. And the bar line separates measures or bars. I am going to draw 2 lines, which is a double bar. And a double bar means it's the end. The double bar means it's the end of the piece. So at the end of this first line, it wasn't a double bar, so we're going to go right on to this next measure. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 measures, 8 bars, separated by bar lines. And then we know that this is the end of a song because of the double bar. In addition to the double bar, we can add 2 dots right here. And that simply means to repeat. So the double bar line with 2 dots means repeat. So bar line, double bar, repeat sign, measures or bars. So if I were to clap this, I'll put my metronome on, my steady beat, I'm going to put it on 72, and I would clap this, and it would go like this, and I'll count 4 beats per every measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, hold 2, hold 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, hold 4, 1, hold 2, hold 3, hold 4, 1, 2, 3, rest, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, 1, 2, rest, rest. We've read in quadruple meter in 4. That was 4 beats, 4 pulses, 4 counts to every measure. And those bar lines separated them in sets of 4 beats. Now we're going to look at meter in 3, the triple meter, where 3 beats to a measure, and that quarter note gets 1 count, 1 beat. And here we have quarter note, quarter note, quarter note. Each one of these is 1, so that measure adds up to 3 beats. Here's a quarter note, quarter rest, quarter note, 1, 1, and 1 equals 3. Half note, 2 beats. And remember our eighth notes equal 1 beat, 2 equal 1 beat because each one of those is a half. And 2 halves together is 1. And then our dotted half note, which is, again, the dot means we add to the half note half of it. So we have 2 beats plus a quarter note, which is 1 beat, equals 3 beats, dotted half note. So this will be counted in 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Notice the pulse still always stays the same. I'll put my metronome on. And I'll clap this. And I'll count it. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, hold 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. And notice I have a double bar at the very end of it, which means that's the end of the piece. Okay, now the next one, example that I have up here, is duple meter, meter in 2, where there's 2 beats for a measure, and the quarter note gets 1 count, or 1 beat. So this is 1, the quarter rest is 2, that's the second beat, there's 1 and 1, 1 and 2, because those 2 together equal 1 beat. This is a half note, it gets 2 counts. And then we have a quarter note, which is 1, and a quarter rest, which is what we started with in the beginning. So with our metronome keeping our steady beat, I'll count this while I clap. 1, 2, 1, and 2. 1, hold 2, 1, rest. And then of course ending with the double bar. That concludes our unit on rhythm. We talked about steady beat, being in time and space, equal pulses, and metronomes, ways in order to keep that steady beat. We talked about tempo, which is the rate of speed, and some Italian words that indicate the tempo, the speed, at the beginning of a piece. We talked about meter, where we have accents and unaccented pulses. Quadruple meter, 4 beats, accented on 1 and 3, unaccented on 2 and 4. Triple meter, accented on 1, and then on 2 and 3 were unaccented, and then duple meter, which is accented, unaccented. Just a quick review of our note values and rest values. We have our whole note, which is an open note head. Our half notes, which are the open note heads with a stem, these are equal to 2, 4, 2. Our quarter note is a filled-in note head with a stem, and that's 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 count each. And then we have our eighth notes with flags, and these are different ways eighth notes are written, with the stems pointing up, stems pointing down, with a beam, with flags, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and we know how we accommodate that for the 16th notes and so forth. We know that we have a dot after a half note that's equal to 3 beats. Our rest values are the same equivalent to our note values. Whole rest, 4 beats. Half rest, half note. Quarter rest, quarter note. Eighth rest, eighth note. And a review of how we notate a song. We establish a meter signature, what meter we're going to be in. This is triple meter. A quarter note gets 1 beat. The bar lines separate sets of 3 beats, because that's what meter we're in. Each of those bar lines separate measures or bars, we call them. So this is a 4-bar song. At the end, we have a double bar, which means it's the end of the piece. We don't go on to the next line when we see a double bar. This is in duple meter, meter and 2. The bar lines are separating sets of 2 beats. And at the very end, we have the double bar with the 2 dots, which is a repeat sign. So that concludes our rhythm unit.